Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Marr. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. All right, everybody, welcome to The Longer Game, where we discuss the future of retail. And we very firmly believe that the future of retail is going omnichannel. Your consumer is in many different, looking at many different shelf spaces, and you need to make sure that you're showing up on the right ones. Today on our show, we have Richard Prasojo. Did I say your name right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, I second-guessed myself. But Richard Prasojo is the CEO and founder of AiStock, which is a software that helps brands improve their cash flow through proper reordering. And Richard is one of the few podcast guests that I've actually had an opportunity to meet in person. We met at a show a couple months ago, and I got an opportunity to talk, and it was a really great personality, and I loved getting to know you. So yeah, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about your journey up to this point, where you're at with AiStock.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate it to be here. Yeah. Well, it all started with Amazon selling as well in the beginning, right? And I enjoyed that. And then turned out, after doing it for a couple of years, I found my passion is more into making solutions for helping other people, helping the ecosystem. And that's where I am right now. I own one company that sells the leads generation, Selgo. And the second one,
Selgo, right?
Yes.
What you said? Okay.
Yeah. And the second one, so Selgo basically helping the ecosystem. We provide the leads generation. We provide the information analytics of like who are the sellers, and how agencies and aggregators can understand more about the sellers, touch points, something like that, right? And the second one, AiStock, which is a little bit more interesting because I firmly believe that supply chain is sexy, very important, right? And it's at the heart of the whole thing, of the whole e-commerce, right?
I mean, it's how products are made and how they get to people. Without all that stuff, the marketing, the content, the advertising, none of that stuff has a home unless you've got your product supply chain down.
Exactly. If we don't have the right amount of inventory, it's a showstopper. Everything stopped at that point.
And
right?
Marketing, I think about this a lot. So we're talking about the Amazon space specifically, but I think in general, there are very sexy categories like beauty. And I think just from a product standpoint, but from a services standpoint, marketing and advertising, those are very sexy categories. People want to be in it. There's this kind of it factor, I think, that's associated with it. And supply chain is not necessarily the most sexy, but I think in a way, AiStock is kind of making it sexy because it shows you how important it is. But I think I'm going really meta here, but if you pull back and you look at relationship between two people, there's usually an instant like physical attraction, but as you grow, you get to know that person, and their personality is what becomes ultimately, I think, really sexy. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but like, I know that you're married, when you've been in a relationship for a long time, the looks I think are still important, but that how you get along with that person, that's really what is the core of the relationship. And so when we look at some of the sexy stuff like that gets people in the door, like marketing, advertising, in order to maintain that relationship with the consumer, bringing it back full circle here, but to maintain that relationship with the consumer, and especially if you're going to have repeat buyers, you have to make sure that you're in stock. And it's such a basic necessity, but in business and as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I've noticed is just getting the basics right and doing them really well, having good operations and delivering on your promises that you provide in sales and have the right marketing, and then making sure that you're financially sound. Like nailing those basics is what helps businesses to be successful. You might have a emerging tech or something else that's coming out, but if you can't nail those basics, then you're kind of dead in the water. So AiStock is focusing, and what you're focusing on is making sure brands understand how important product supply chain is, because based on what we've talked about, they don't always know how and when to make the right decision. So talk about some of the, and you've done a lot of research with brands and finding out what some of their problems are as well as their pain points. And you told me you differentiate between those two things. So talk about problems and pain points of brands and what you've discovered in that process.
Sure. Let me do it this way, Mike. So I've talked with many people, many customers. We call it product market fit, right? So during this conversation, I can simplify all my hundreds of conversation into one single word. Their specific problem is reordering, right? So we are talking about the seller, the emerging sellers that already, they know how to do the product research. They're so good at do the product launching. But when it comes to the operation, when it comes to the reordering, well, I asked them like, hey, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know that? There are three questions that coming up. The most important questions. Number one, the sellers, they need to know that out of all of their SKUs, what is the risk of out of stock? For any of their SKUs, if there are any risk, and let's say, what is the day of out of stock? Is it like 1 day? Is it like 60 days? They need to know that. So number two, that these people, the sellers, they need to know when to place their next order and how many, right? Number three is they need to know how is their sales seasonality in the incoming future. So those are three main questions. That is what we call specific problem reordering. And then when I talk more with the sellers, more hyper focusing on the one that makes $1 million annual revenue, right? This is like great people, very savvy sellers, right? They have like less than 2 years of selling on Amazon. They hit $1 million, and there are lots of them, right? So interview them, talk with them, and then what I found out, once somebody hits 1M, that point, and then they can see that they can hit 2M, 3M, and so forth, right? And they want to do that. And I asked them, like, what's your biggest?
It's kind of like a benchmark of, hey, I've made it here. What's the next step?
I mean, it's just the business, right? You want to move forward, and then you get more encouraged. And then you feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do the next one. I can make it 2x, 3x, 5x, right? I asked them like, hey, what's your biggest pinpoint? And then they've told me, cash flow. What does it mean, cash flow? It means like, we need to understand a couple of psychological things and the truth behind this $1 million sellers, right? These people, I mean, how about this? Surprising fact, even they hit $1 million, they barely make any money yet. And they know that. And one thing that they do it right. They want to put back all of the profits into the capital.
And I think a lot of brands don't know that, especially when you're like getting up and running on Amazon. Amazon has a ton of potential. And I just read an article where, months out of recording this show, but I read an article that said the trailing 12 months have seen $1 trillion in e-commerce sales. So it's significant. And Amazon's 41%, maybe slightly more of that. Sometimes it waxes and wanes. But a lot of people there's plenty of opportunity there, and the runway I think is shorter than being in a retail store because you get quicker data, you can analyze it, you can make adjustments quicker. But a lot of people don't realize that you don't really make a ton of money in that, and sometimes people invest in first 6 months to maybe even a year of growing because it takes that to build the momentum that you need. So I just want to cement that for brands. Like if you want to get up and running on Amazon, you want to grow, it's going to take an investment to get there. Just like any business, even on your own D2C site, if you own a restaurant, if you're in retail, like all that stuff takes time to get profitable and make money. But I think one of the interesting things about Amazon is you've got a little bit more control over the momentum of that, and you've already got built-in consumers that want to purchase, which is not the same maybe in a retail store, but it's not necessarily the same on your own site.
Right. And that's a good thing too, because when you put your capital back, you can write off some taxes too, right? I mean, everything becomes more like an expense or a working capital, right? It becomes asset, that kind of thing. So let's say the first 2 years, they all put back or all of their capital into the business. They hit 1 million, and then they want to know more. They need more growth capital. Okay, this is a couple of things that like very fluid but very related. It's kind of like a chain, right? That's why we call it supply chain. All of the sellers, they need to have the right amount of inventory to scale up, right? Meaning like if they don't, they have to slow down bids. That's bad. If they are out of stock, that means like they miss sales, their rank is plummeting and all of those things, right? And then
and when you go out of stock, I've seen it regularly where it's not just your back in stock and sales are up again. Everyone that has been selling, at least when it comes to Amazon, everyone that's been selling has now sales history and sales velocity ahead of you. And so you have to get back to that spot either through rank promotions or more aggressive advertising. It costs when you run out of stock, not just missing sales, but when you get back in stock, it costs additional money that you would not have had to do if you had the right inventory.
Yes, it costs money. It costs a lot of efforts. It costs time to get back there, right? All of this PPC build just to go into the first page and at the top position, it's not easy and it's costly, right? And everything, right? It costs everything. So so basically, when it comes to cash flow, what I want to say is simple, right? They want to have the right amount of cash flow so they can put into the supply chain. But one of the dangerous thing here, do not just overstock, because that will make the sellers paying more overheads as well as make them less liquid. Imagine this one: if a seller has a 10 SKUs, the question here is like, okay, you have a good bottom line, you have a new capital injection coming. How do you know what kind of SKU you want to focus on, right? Do you just distribute? If you do that, how do you distribute? Or you want to hyper focus on one thing, and why, and how do you do that? So that's why these are all cash flow, inventory and cash flow are like the problems that I believe like 99% of people that in the beginning, they take it for granted. Once they hit the same problem, they will start thinking, they will like, okay, let me take a step back. Let me understand, do I have this system? Or like, do I have the right people to run this? So I just want to, so the best way to...
You're talking about even from a larger business perspective, like, all right, I've gotten to this point. Do I have the right people in place? Do I have the right processes to make this business successful?
Yes. And one of the things I see, if they're already like 5 million to 10 million annual revenue of brands, high growth brands, we call it. Yes, they have the money, they have the power to hire the right people to do this, like dedicated supply chain people, right? But when they're in 1M, 2M, no. This kind of like solopreneur, or they call it, they are transition from solopreneur to teampreneurs. That's when we see the gap in the business, okay, that these people can just use a software that is cheap enough. We want to make the expensive cheap. It's cheap enough. they cannot just use Blue Yonder or Manhattan Associates. Those are like a public traded company. That's a very, very expensive solution, right? They
Okay.
can use something that's good enough for them, and then they do a little bit adjusting, understanding the data. They can. So most of our users, they use it like 5 days a week, and they come every day for like 30 minutes to see like what's going on here. And then this can help these people to be like more efficient, save time, precise, well informed, optimize in their supply chain. And then the result is they can improve their profitability, and then they can project the business expansion, because now they know, once they know sales, they know inventory planning. Once they know that, they can see the cash flow projection in the future. Yeah.
One
So,
of the things that you mentioned was overstocking, and I think people know that they don't want to run out, and so there's a tendency to go to extremes. But what you mentioned, I think, was important, and that is when you overstock, your money is now in inventory that could potentially be put into the right software solutions, that it could be put into advertising, that could be put into getting new creative, hiring the right people. And so it's important that cash flow is not a new concept, and having the right cash flow. As a business owner, I get that. I understand that you have to have cash flow. You have to have the right liquidity so that you can pay for the things that are important. And with a product-based business versus a service, you have to buy the physical goods, and when your money is held up in those physical goods, it can actually hurt you instead of help you. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't consider when it comes to growth, they want to see the growth numbers, and one of the reasons why hypergrowth is actually bad is because you don't have the capability to sustain. I mean, you can't predict hypergrowth, but you don't have the capability to sustain the demand that you've now created. And then you immediately go out of stock. And then in order to fulfill that demand that you've created, let's say you sell 100 of something, and you create a demand where now you need 500 of something, at a very short period of time. Do the sales of that 100 items, is that going to add up to you being able to purchase 500 items to fulfill that demand? So people don't think about the inventory requirements. Like, they want the sales, and getting sales is not, I don't think it's that difficult. Sorry to anyone out there who wants people to believe it's difficult to get sales. What I think is difficult is getting people to come back and continue to purchase, or have higher lifetime value, but also getting to a profitable place. And almost anybody can get sales, but really building momentum, getting people to see the value, and refining your costs over time. That is where I think execution becomes really, really important in any brand. But people don't think about, I create a lot of sales. Well, now I have to. They don't think, okay, well, I need more inventory. It just seems natural. But if you're not prepared for that, I mean, that can cause you to fold in your business.
right. Exactly, Michael. I totally agree with everything you said. Nothing is new.
Good, because it's my podcast, and I want you to agree with everything I say.
Yeah. Nothing is new under the sun. We all know that, right? So, meaning it's just how do we use it in a new way, especially the inventory and cash flow thing. So, and this is, I'm not talking about the tool I'm not talking about the service, the software service that we are doing, but I'm talking about going back 2 years from today. 2 years ago, I look at the whole ecosystem. I look at, there's no tool there's no something like this, that is supposed to be there, right? And then when when the pandemic hits, I was like, yeah, see, supply chain. Everyone talk about restock limit. That's not really a problem. I mean, that's very easy to solve. But the real problem is the planning itself.
What's your solution for that? Before you go forward, you talk about restock limits that Amazon sets, and they just came out. And we had some clients that got their restock limits cut by 58%. What's your quick solution for that?
It's not very hard, Michael. We have something that can plan the whole FBA inbound inventory in FBA inbound thing, right? So the solution is make the FBA inbound more frequent with less quantity, and then make it as a batches. By doing
Nope.
that, then you will maintain your sell through rate always in almost 100%. Because basically, if you do that, and then how many to do that, we have an algorithm to just see like what's going on last week. Or I mean, you make your own call, right? You want to make it the batches in weekly or monthly or
Hmm.
bi-weekly. By doing that, we have an algorithm to see like, hey, what's left, what's gone last week or last 2 weeks, and then we calculate a lot of things, and then we make the new API inbound, something like that. So
What do
when
you say to people who would then say, well, that's going to increase my cost?
uh, well, it depends. SBD is expensive. If you do it LTL, it's much more affordable. Not really. I mean, it's the same. I mean, I would say our SBD, yes, and people they're like doing SBD because they wanna get their inbound shipping as soon as possible. It's not necessarily true. With LTL, is slower. Probably takes like it depends on the location as well, on the
I mean,
geographic.
I've seen stuff get checked in very quickly. I've seen some stuff take a really long time. It kind of, like you said, it depends upon the fulfillment center.
It's all about planning, Michael. What I'm saying, right? If we plan properly, even if it takes 10 days, it doesn't matter. Let's say the day is gone. Taking this one pallet will take 10 days to go there, right? To come there, check in everything to be live. Let's say,
Yep.
right? And then if we have the proper planning, then after this, the 5 days after the day, when when this pallet is still on the truck somewhere, then you're ready for the next inbound. You do that all the time with the right planning, everything will be good. And LTL is really really affordable
Yeah.
cost.
Well, especially when you're using Amazon's cost
Exactly,
inside, and
exactly.
yeah.
So the key, like, I want to repeat one more time, right? Make it most using our solution, we make it more frequent and less quantity. More
Okay.
frequent inbound, less quantity. That will always maintain your sell through rate in a good shape. And then when you need the whole, and then your stock limit will always like, they will give you like, they will make you, they know that you're maintaining that sell through rate really good. They always give you good amount of restock limit. When you need it, you can make it double, triple, quadruple easier, especially in the
One,
holidays.
and I would tell people that yes, I asked you what you would say, like, oh, it's going to cost more. I don't know. It might cost a little bit more, but the cost of going out of stock or not maintaining enough inventory and keeping a high sell through rate with Amazon, when we know that that's valuable to them based on how they rate you in the back end with your IPI or inventory performance index, the score they give you that determines how healthy they think your inventory is moving through their facilities. And I think essentially Amazon doesn't want to be, they don't want to be a storage facility.
Okay.
They want
Yeah,
they
that's
want
it.
to be a fulfillment center, exactly what they say. And that's why they've created Amazon Warehousing and Distribution to be more of a 3PL type service. And of course, it makes sense as someone who, you want to get stuff into their fulfillment center. If they now have an additional warehousing system that can get stuff in quicker, it makes sense for them to create something upstream so that you can utilize that as opposed to going with just a totally different person. But I think it costs more to go out of stock than it does to keep stuff in stock and go more frequent. And I think the thing that's important in any business is being adaptable. It's not ideal that Amazon says, hey, you can't just send an inventory and sit on it. But do we really expect a company that has grown a lot and has grown because they focused on their customer? And don't get me wrong, I think Amazon could be way better in their relationship with sellers and brands across the board. I think they can be, and I think they're starting to realize that. And we're seeing some movement, but I think there could be more movement in that direction. But there is, I think we've gone a little bit awry if we expect Amazon to just cater to what our needs are. Like, they've got something good going, and if they're going to make decisions based on what they think is best. We have to be, as a brand, you have to be flexible with what's going on. So instead of getting upset about it, just coming up with a solution, less inventory more frequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to add to that, right, the cost side, right? Not everything has a pro cons, right? Even if you want to ship something in a big chunk to Amazon, that will cost more because now your IPS score will go down, and then you will have to pay more storage if if you have like overstock in Amazon, right? So nothing is like, I think the best way to say this is like, we need to understand like every single aspect, every single cost, expenses, and then I would say sometimes we have to pick our poison. Which one you want to pick, right? And this is not really a poison. I would say if we can do it right, then I would say using the right tactics with the right solution, and then having the right agency or the right community to help. I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
So I think having the one of the things that I've taken away as an entrepreneur is having the right community. That's something that you just said. Having the right community and the right support. As the leader of my organization, it's important that I get guidance on the right things to do. In fact, I'll be meeting with my business coach later today, and when I need help or I'm feeling like stuck or a little frustrated, or just even regularly meet with someone to help give me guidance to make sure I'm making the right decisions. And so if you try to go it alone, I think you're at a big disadvantage as opposed to getting good, knowledgeable partners on your team and relying upon those people. As a service agency, we don't have a desire to develop any kind of IP around technology. That's not our goal, but we leverage partners that have an ad tech solution or something like AiStock. Like, we look for those tools that allow us to do our job better and continue to build into the relationship that we have with the client. So we leverage those partnerships, and the cost to develop a service like that, that's not our skill set. So we'd be doing something that would be outside of what our real talent and abilities are, which is growing brands on Amazon and building those relationships with people. So we lean into that, and that's something that's helped me significantly. You'll still have to do heavy lifting. You'll still have to, make sure you're on track. But when you try and go at it alone, especially in something that's complicated like Amazon or even just a direct-to-consumer business in general, if you try to do it all alone, I think you're asking for a tougher road than it needs to be.
Yep. So e-commerce I love e-commerce. One of the things I love e-commerce because it's not heavily regulated, right? It doesn't really need any compliance, actually. That's one good thing, right? But I agree with what you said, that you're meeting your business mentor. So in the context of the community or, the ecosystem, right? If we tap into the right community, if we talk with the right people, we can, I always take advice from people who are ahead of me, just to avoid something simple, to avoid risk burning my business to the ground. That's it. Right. So, and
that's a good reason. That's a good reason to listen to someone.
Yeah.
I will also say a lot of people want to give advice, but the advice that everyone gives, they don't always have to live with that advice. So it's important that you find someone that's trusted. So like you said, someone that's ahead of you, someone that has built something that's successful, or maybe, generating more revenue than you, or has better profitability. Leaning into those people who have that experience, I think that's smart. Whereas someone who hasn't done something, or maybe doesn't have experience, or has a different kind of experience, everyone wants to give you advice, but they don't have to live with that advice. So seeking out the right people, I think, is key, which is, again, finding the right partners and the right people that are trustworthy to lean in, lean into those people.
Mike, I really like your the way you frame this podcast, the longer game. I think that's the most important, right? Longer game. I feel like, looking at all of the businesses out there, everything, right? If the business is growing too fast and too soon, either they're really, really like 1% who understand how to do it well, or Ponzi, right? But it's really about the longer game. It's really about, it's really about understanding like how things work and understanding people around us. inside the community and understanding what's the do's and what's the don't, right? Understanding the best practices, understanding the risk, assessing the risk. I think is like, I would say all entrepreneurs, they should be driven by risk instead of by the reward, right? Because if you want to be a good entrepreneur, I mean, if we always our eyes always like looking at the reward, then we will fall easily, right? Risk.
Well, I think there's just gonna be times in business where it's more difficult than others. It's not, and I mean, I think that's life too, but especially in running a brand, there's gonna be times of tightening, or any business. There's gonna be times of tightening. There's gonna be times of expansion and growth, and I think if you're so focused on the finality or the end journey, if you're not focused on the journey but you're focused on the end result, it can get you tripped up, and I think it can make your perspective off because you're not focusing on the longer game. And I think if it really is, if life is about the journey, then it's about taking those moments as they come, dealing with the difficult things. So when your cup is bitter, drinking it in communion. But when your cup is sweet, drink it with grace. You don't have to flaunt it in front of people. So I think taking things as they come is important, and just being able to embrace those moments and realize like there's going to be painful stuff. There's going to be difficult stuff. If you thought this was going to be easy, then this may not be for you. I don't think everyone is meant to be a brand owner or an entrepreneur. It's just not. I think we need all types of people, and someone that's going to lead like a big corporation. Like that's not me. I don't have that skill set. Whatever it is, it's not me. But being an entrepreneur and growing and building something that I really feel strongly and purpose behind, like that suits my DNA. But if you thought it was going to be easy, you thought wrong. It's definitely going to have its, like you said, everything has its pros and cons.
Yep. As let's go back into brand, right? Supply chain and brands. So I believe, right, if we do the right decision on the inventory optimization, inventory cash flow, I call it like ICF, inventory cash flow optimization, right? Either using our solution or using any solutions out there that it's possible to do it, or either using it manually through discussion with agencies, with some experts. There are three things, right? The most important thing, like from the supply chain into the scaling the business. Number one, we need to be able to increase profitability or revenue. Right, that's number one. I mean, if the business doesn't make profit, then it will not be good. Right. Number two,
you said profitability or revenue.
Yes.
So you're saying you can't focus on both?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's say increasing profitability. Thank you so much, Mike, to pinpoint into that. Yes, increasing profitability. Number two is increasing the customer engagement. Customer engagement is very, very important because you mentioned earlier about LTV, about the churn LTV. So I think customer loyalty is super important. And in the beginning, usually the smaller brand, they don't see it. They just want to like hit the sales. But the more mature they got, then they got more understanding that, well, customer engagement is important. So they need to know who is their avatar. They need to know who is their ideal customer profile. Who are they? Very specific, right? Number three, which is, I think it's hard to do, but it's not impossible. It's hard to do from the big, especially when the sellers are still small. And then it's called project expansion or exit, right? It doesn't have to be exit. I mean, it really depends on what they want to do, but I would call it project expansion, right? So every good business, they need to know like what is their goal, and then how to achieve there, right? Where to go, like when to go there.
Just have a goal. Sometimes people don't have a goal; they just say growth. But like, what does that look like? There needs to be specifics, which is why when people come up with like SMART goals, that's a good framework because you have to have something that's measurable. If you just say, I want to grow, well, there's nothing to be accountable to. And that lack of accountability can breed a lack of results. I think if you tell a kid, hey, don't do that or you're going to be in trouble, and they do something and they don't get in trouble, unconsciously or subconsciously, they will think, I can do this and get away with it. They might consciously think of it as well, but if there are no consequences, there's no accountability, then they're going to continue to do the same thing. Same with yourself. If you don't set a target and you don't have anything to reach towards, it's going to be a lot harder to get where you want to go if you don't know where you're going.
Yep. Exactly.
I heard an adage of a pilot saying, I've got good news, like come over the intercom and said, I've got good news and bad news. Bad news is we're lost. The good news is we're making great time. But making great time to where?
Yeah.
That's important. You have to have a target. So anyway, setting a project expansion is, in your mind, setting a target of where you want to go and then achieving that. And so it could be an exit at the end of it, but also just setting a very specific goal is helpful.
Exactly. So a couple of things, right? Everything when it comes to the work, the business is always two things. One is the process and the other one is the result, right? By understanding, by having having a strong vision to like how, like what is the vision, and then after that, these brands, they can know like, okay, this is my number, this is my goal, this is my result expectation, and then for like how long, the timeline, right? Once that one is being planned well, then it's time to really refine the process, and that's iteration process, and then get sub result one, from sub result one, and then iterate the process again, refine again, sub result two, and so on, right? So all in all, I just want to say everything can be simplified into one word, which is forecast. Forecast is very important, but people don't get me wrong, right? Yeah, anybody can do just forecast anything. This is a free speech world. Anything we say is for the future, right? But I'm talking about, we need to have the forecast for all of this inventory, all of this cash flow, all of this sales. That's really going to impact any business's bottom line.
Richard, if people want to, I think it's a great place to just to wrap this up. So if people want to find out more about you and where they can locate you or what you're doing at AiStock, where would they go? You get around a lot in a good way. So could they find you leaving a show and having a conversation by the escalators like we did? Where would people want to go and find you if they want to know more about what you're doing?
Oh, okay. I think the easiest way to do this is through LinkedIn. I'm pretty active in LinkedIn, right? Just find my name, Richard Prasojo. Probably next year, I plan to go to some of the key shows, and yeah, okay. But LinkedIn probably is one of the first step to and then we can talk. I always respond to people like very quick in LinkedIn, and then from there, usually we can bring it into email and into like a call. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll have Richard's LinkedIn profile somewhere underneath whatever it is that you're watching or listening to. But Richard, thanks for coming on the show and giving us some insight into product supply chain and showing us the real sexiness behind what makes brands tick and grow. And I think this is, to everyone out there listening, let this be a galvanization of the fact that just doing the basics really well is what allows you to be successful. Knowing who you're serving and staying close to that, creating the right processes, and then setting goals and making sure that you're achieving them. Having a clear focus and a clear vision is helpful, but just nailing the basics. That's what I think makes anything good and successful. You can have a lot of bells and whistles, and I think that can be helpful, but if you don't have a core concept in mind, you don't have a core process, or you just don't have an understanding of where you're going, direction, you might be lost, but you'll get there quickly wherever it is that you're going. So keep that in mind. I hope everyone continues to focus on nailing the basics and doing that well. And that's our show. That's it. That's all we got for you. Get out of here.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, even go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.